Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Wargames show. We all know what we're talking about. There we go. They are here.
They're there.
The 2-month wait is over. I'm in the house. Abe's in the house. Adam's in the house. We're all ready to go. The miniatures showed up too. They're awesome, and we have videos of them, and you can go watch them all.
Take Larry's word for it that they're awesome.
They're awesome. Hey,
take my word for it. I built them.
That's true. The Silent King. How long did it take you to build the Silent King?
The Silent King I built over 2 nights, but it was 2 separate sections. So the first thing I did was build the throne. That took about 2.5 hours, give or take. And then the little guys took about another 1.5 to 2 hours because they're spindly and fiddly, and I wanted to make sure I was cleaning them correctly. So I took a lot more time with the little fine parts. But yeah, it actually didn't take that long. The Doomstalker was the fastest build. That one took about 45 minutes to put together. It was super fast.
Wow.
And the Destroyer, the Locust Heavy Destroyer, took the second longest.
It's so
I said
small.
in the video, if you watch the video, yeah, there's the torso. There's 3 pieces that kind of like sandwiched another piece together, and then you have to put like the peg in the middle, and then take the torso piece you just built and the chest piece, the front part, and put them together. And if you can't see how it lines up correctly, and you just have to kind of feel it. And if your glue is setting and all this other stuff, it can really it was not a fun build. That one was not a fun build.
That new walker right there that we're showing is so much bigger than the one that comes in the Indominus Park. I thought they were going to be the same size.
I thought they were going to be the same kit, to be perfectly honest. And when I finished building it and got it in the studio, we did a side-by-side. It's very clear that the Canoptic Doomstalker is much larger than the Canoptic Reanimators you can see there. So of the 3, if you're going to... I really like the Doomstalker just from like a thematic and like hobby perspective. So like I would love to run 3 of those in an army just because they were so easy to build. I think... The gun's really powerful for like a one-shot type of gun, but I mean, whatever. It was a neat build. So
cool.
Went together real fast.
All right, so let's talk everybody about what everybody wants to talk about. Codexes. The Codexes here. Oh, also GW also just updated every fact in the game this morning, so everything is crazy right now. Everyone is just sifting through them, trying to figure out what is going on.
Real quick too. I do want to say, if you are curious about any of the models or the codexes, we have videos, 4 videos live on our YouTube channel that you can go watch right now. That is me going through stuff. So with the three new Space Marine models, the 3 new Necron models, and both codexes, all of those are live on our YouTube channel right now.
We'll put those links. We'll put those links in right now for you.
Yeah.
For anybody who's watching. Go check them out.
Yep.
All right. So where do we want to start? I guess we should start with Space Marines. Abe, let's wade into the swamp first just some real basics. So these are both $50 books. There's the sides of them right there, so you can all see them. That's the Necron one on the right and the Space Marine one on the left. The Necron one. The Necron one is not empty. Like Necron one is a totally like normal average codex, 120 pages. This monster,
208.
This monster, something like that. This is 208.
Yeah.
Big, huge, giant, chunky book. Huge. So much stuff is in this book. Abe, let's wait on in there. What are you seeing right off the bat? What are you surprised about? What are the biggest changes? Let's go.
Yeah. So I think one thing that was in a way surprising to me, though maybe it shouldn't be, is that arguably this Space Marine Codex is a bigger change. It's a big change, right? This is a huge change. It's arguably a bigger change than the previous one was. That even though that was the one that like made Marines good for the for the first time in 8th edition, this is arguably a bigger change because that one was mostly there weren't really many new units that were actually in that codex, right? All those units had already came out almost entirely, and then it was a lot of like some of these units got a little better, and there's a lot of rules that got layered on in the other codex, right? So there's less of a layering on rules in this codex, but there's a lot more new units got added, and a lot of stat tweaks all around the units and models and everything.
Huge amounts of tweaks, of tweaks all over the place.
And because of that, there is still things that I've missed. I know, because there's a lot of little subtle stat line changes that you might not expect, things like that. Like one that I missed for a couple days looking at it was that eliminators went to -2 up ballistic skill. They were a 3+ ballistic skill in the previous codex. They went to a 2+ ballistic skill in this codex. I think that is partially because they used to have a weapon that was like the +2 to hit shot, which they can't have anymore because you can't get a +2 to hit really. So it's only a +1 to hit now. So they want you to always be hitting on a 2+ with that, even if you're taking a -1 to be shot at, to be shoot, to target basically. So there's stuff like that in there. So it is a really big change. I think some of the things that we are seeing on a structural level in both of these books that probably will be carrying on is obviously we had the big core changes, right? So we're seeing a limitation of who gets to use auras. Across the board, we are seeing and this is something that we started to see in 8th edition, but it wasn't quite as obvious, I think. We're seeing them wanting to have not necessarily less, but less powerful and vulnerable saves, right?
Sure.
Pretty much everything that was a 3+ invulnerable save went to a 4+ invulnerable save, and a number of things that had 4+ invulnerable saves have changed to a 5+ invulnerable save.
Okay.
And we saw that back when they started doing that with like demons and knights, right? When they were like, no, you can't actually get a 3+ invulnerable. That they had to FAQ that last edition. But I would not be surprised if once all the books are out for this edition, that a 3+ invulnerable save is almost unheard of.
So even like Storm Shield Terminators are no longer 3-ups.
Storm Shields are all up to 4-ups now. I think there is still like a way. I think there's a Satan power or something that gets you a 3+ invulnerable save. So there are still 3+ invulnerable saves in the game, but they are exceedingly rare now. Whereas in 8th edition, they were actually pretty common.
Right. Which is great. I'm all about that.
Right. Well, I'm definitely about that. And we also, like I said, we saw a lot of we saw some of the 4+ saves go up to 5+, especially on like the Impulsor. So there's not really any vehicles, I think, that have a 4+ save anymore. 4+ save, not a bad change again. I'm definitely in favor of these things. So that was like a couple of the big. We've seen a reduction in random damage across the board. If you're paying attention, there is still things that do random damage, but a lot more things. A lot of things that did D3 damage went to just straight 2 damage, and a lot of things have an increase of a lot of the big anti-tank weapons, with the exception of las cannons, which have just been left behind to be garbage this edition, I guess.
Sure.
We've seen an increase with like Melta and some of the other heavy anti-tank weapons to be like 3+ D3 or something like that, to have a higher minimum. So those are a couple of the big changes across the board. I think this is the Space Marine book in particular. I'm not as familiar with Necrons both before or after, so I can't speak with as much authority, but I think this Space Marine book is a significantly more balanced book. They toned down some of the crazy things, and they brought up some of the worst things. That's not to say there's nothing that's abusable in the book, and I think it's still a very powerful book. I think the Space Marine book has moved from what we saw with like Iron Hands lists that were these big castling vehicle lists. I think it's moving towards an offensive infantry list more, which fits the fluff a little better, and I think is actually just fine in 8th edition, because that's kind of, or 9th edition, that's kind of 9th edition's thing anyway, right?
Right.
Sorry, my power cord came unplugged here. So I think that's another big change from a structural standpoint. And then I think the best thing about these books is I think both of these books of this new format is probably the best laid out codexes have ever been. They're well laid out. We've seen effectively USRs are back, right? Each of the Space Marine Codex has a bunch of pages that are like these generic rules used by the Army. They've stopped reprinting all the rules and everything on every page, or on every data sheet, so it's much cleaner. And the points are incredibly well laid out at the back of the book now. Where you have an easy table to go through, and and change things. We've also saw one of the surprises in this book that didn't make sense, that actually we just got our first look at today. What it means is we saw that stratagems have been broken up into different categories. There's 5, I think, and before today we didn't have any idea what that actually meant because there wasn't any effect of it, but we did see today that Dante has a new rule that allows him to use a stratagem from one of those categories for free once a game.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So I haven't read all the FAQ. I haven't parsed through all the FAQs, so I don't know if there's other changes like that, but I noticed that. So there are some big structural changes you'll see in these books that are certainly going to affect future books. So that's kind of the high-level stuff there.
Cool.
Yeah.
Adam, what have you been noticing?
I mean, Abe covered a lot of it there. I will say I'm also not super up to what the old Necrons had, but I mean, the new book is really nicely laid out. It's got 20 plus something like new units in there as well. So
Yep.
it's a lot, and these are essentially brand new units that we haven't had a chance to really play test or see them in action. Just a lot of theory hammer too. So it's really early and really hard to tell how the Necrons and the Space Marines are going to perform. I think Space Marines are still going to be good. I don't think that's going to change. It's going to be telling to see how well Necrons do once people start to figure out how to use their new units, new abilities. Just the stratagem, new stratagem. Everything's changed for that book essentially, and it effectively doubled the number of models in the range, and it's going to take some experimentation to play around with to figure out what's good in there. I mean, they have new dynasty rules, new command protocols. Like, there's just a lot to take into account. I think it's going to be one of those armies that's going to be very rewarding if you can plan out you have a game plan in mind and execute that game plan using the command protocols to help buff the things that you want to get done on specific turns. If you can accomplish those goals, I think it'll be really good. It'll be very rewarding in that sense if you really can kind of predict the flow of the battle. If you can't do that very well, it's gonna be rough. I'm not gonna lie. Just the way the command protocols work, it's similar to, but less predictable than the chapter doctrines, I would say, because again, the doctrines, turn 1, turn 2, turn 3, etc. With the command protocols, you set them at the start of the game. You write them down, and then that's the order they activate in, unless you have an outside rule like the Silent King allows you to swap stuff in and out, or swap one thing in and out. Yeah,
it's kind of a weird concept because those things, they feel like it's a combination of like the Marine ones,
yeah,
and like Imperial Guard orders. It feels like a weird combo because you have to plan them out turn by turn, but then they aura off of your effectively officers, off your nobles.
Right.
So it's just weird. It's not just like army wide and table wide. So you have to plan them out in advance, and then you got to make sure that where you have all your HQs matters.
Yeah, you've got to plan them out in advance. You've got to get the people in position. You've got to remember what they can do, both of them, because a lot of the times you're picking one or the other per the aura or per the unit. So in some cases, in some dynasties, actually get to activate both at the same time. So,
sure.
But again, you have to pick and plan ahead. So the mental strain, I would say, of playing a Necron army is a little bit different. But if you can get the hang of that, if you can master that aspect of the army, it's going to be very, very rewarding, I think. So
yeah, I think
it's a neat mechanic, but it's you got to be there to do it.
I think Necrons were a little dull and boring of an army before, and they've given them that depth that lots of the other kind of more older top tier armies have now, where there's just your units, and then there's your dynasty, and then there's your army special rule, and then there's your weird turn by turn doctrine strategy. So like all these things layer, and if there's anything 40K players love, they love like 14 layers of layering that you have to keep track of, and Necrons didn't have that before, and now they have.
They certainly have that. The Space Undead have layers, and they are still, the changes to escalation of reanimation protocols does affect the army. Debatable. I don't know. if it's good or bad. I think it does. We talked about this last week, I think, but it does add more steps to the game and more roles and stuff like that. So, not looking forward to that because it can be a little time consuming. But again, the Necrons are an army that are going to reward you for learning it and playing it very well and mastering the army overall and being able to wrap your head around and plan not just a turn or two in advance, but your entire game plan and then executing that game plan very well. So, but yeah, again, like 20 plus new units to play around with, plus all the old stuff as well. Tons of new rules. Yeah.
Yeah, they really like breathed some new life into the Codex, or
yeah,
like reanimated it a bit. Maybe
they reanimated.
Yeah.
I'd say they reanimated the Codex.
I think one thing that I noticed about it is that it seems because a lot of the new units or a number of the new units are close combat focused, kind of, or really short range, and it seems like this is a much more aggressive Necron army.
Yeah.
And I do wonder, because I said the same thing about Space Marines, if that is a conscious design decision they're making for all the 9th edition codexes, is to make them more aggressive, combined with the new missions and the smaller table size. It almost feels like a War Machine-esque thing, right? Where like War Machine, especially early on, portrayed itself as this very aggressive, get to the middle of the table and fight it out thing.
I think you just nailed something there too, Abe. The smaller board sizes, I think, are a factor in this too. You kind of need some close combat stuff in your army now, just because the board sizes are so much. They're not super smaller, but they are. There's a good chunk of the board that can theoretically be.
You can already get first turn charges fairly easily on the bigger board.
Right, but now the diagonal is also smaller. Right?
Now the diagonal is smaller, and now it's no longer like, oh, I need to roll like a 10 to get this first turn charge. It's I need to roll like a 5 to get this first turn charge. Thing.
Yeah, exactly.
It makes me really wonder what they're going to do. It makes me wonder what they're going to do with Tau, because that's really the one army right now that doesn't have any
Crew,
good
baby. Crew.
Any good
Vespins,
aggressive push unit that can get it, that can tangle in combat kind of thing.
Yeah. So I think this was definitely a conscious decision by Games Workshop to bring up some more close combat units for the Necrons, if for nothing else to have a buffer against those first turn charges. To allow you to get in position. And they do have a lot of mid to short range firepower that is pretty deadly if you do it right. Not saying they don't have long range shooting, but the standard Necron Warrior's gun, they've got some weird rapid fire double tap mechanics they can do too to extend ranges or extend the rapid fire range in particular, not necessarily the maximum range. So it's going to be interesting, and I haven't had a chance to really deep dive into the point cost of stuff or that kind of an analysis to see if things are pointed. The big complaint from last edition was that Necrons were just too expensive for what they did, yada yada yada. So it'll be interesting to see with all the new units combined with all the new rules, and tabulate all that out with the point values to see where they end up. So.
I mean, it is interesting to me, especially given that like Necrons still aren't that huge of an army list, right? Like they're pretty big now, but they're not huge. That they do have 4 Lord of Wars.
They do,
which is more than like almost
anybody.
Like Guard and Knights have 4 Lord of Wars, right? And that's it. But like. Space Marines have 0 Lords of War in their 98 data sheets in their codex.
Yeah. Yep.
Gaiman's no longer a Lord of War, right?
Well, he's not in the book. Because he's in the Ultramarine.
Sure.
He's in the Ultramarine book. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. Okay, I see what you're saying. Yeah. The Monolith is now a Lord of War.
Yep.
It is.
They changed that. It's changed.
And the
Silent King.
Yep.
Silent King's our first Supreme Commander as well.
They are the first Supreme Commander. Yes.
Yeah, so you have to, if you take that in your list, you have to take him as your Warlord.
I mean, I guess we're gonna have we checked the FAQ? Are any of the other Space Marine people in there have they been noted as Supreme Commanders? Like, is Guilliman the Supreme Commander? Is Dante the Supreme Commander?
I haven't checked the Guilliman to see if Guilliman is.
Yeah.
I mean, he should be, but
he
was
still
thinking
Dante's
not.
not.
Dante's
Yes.
not. No.
I was thinking of other big
Oh,
changes
okay,
too.
interesting. Okay.
The scouts, we had that rumor that leaked late Thursday or Friday. That rumor page.
Yep.
Most of that stuff turned out to be legit.
Yep.
Scouts being elites is kind of a big change.
Yep. And one
kind
wound.
of a big, kind of a screw you to scouts out there.
I think the day of scouts is over. You know, they've
now,
had.
are they still core? I forget.
Yes, they are core.
Yeah. So at
They
least
are
they got
core,
that. Yeah,
but
they're essentially on parity with Reavers now, which was always a question we had. Was like, hey, Reavers are supposed to be the close combat unit? Because they had, the heavy bolt pistol and a close combat weapon, and then
were
no elites.
one was.
Yeah,
I mean, it's not even the one wound. No, everyone was taking scouts because it was it was the cheapest way of taking troops. That is the only reason. It was the fact that they were troops. So them moving to elites, scouts are gone. You're just not going to see them anymore.
If you need a cheap elite slot,
scouts have been, and scouts have been unnaturally showing up since 6th. So 6th and 7th, and it's like for a long, all during kind of the middle editions, nobody used them, and then people kind of found a use for them around 6th, and they were like, hey, like, because there were some chapter doctrines, and it was like, hey, these guys are cheap, and you could like take the close combat ones and buff them, and they were actually like okay in assault, and then so at that point they were like effective and cheap. And then in 7th and 8th, they stayed because then people figured out, oh, I'm just going to use these guys because tactical Marines suck. And then, but
they're cheap.
He does not appear to be a Supreme Commander.
Wow. Guilliman is not a Supreme Commander.
He does have to be your Warlord if you take him, but he does not appear to be a Supreme Commander.
Who the heck's going to be Supreme Commanders then? I guess like Swarmlord maybe, right? Like the people who are like clearly like I'm the guy.
If Guilliman's not a Supreme Commander, then why would the Swarmlord be?
Because
I don't know, man.
Hey, I don't know. It specifically says...
unless that's going to change at some point, he is not a Supreme Commander currently.
It wouldn't surprise me if, like, whenever they redo at some point it's factors. That seems highly, highly weird that Guilliman would not be a Supreme Commander.
Seems like a little bit of an oversight.
Only the Emperor is a Supreme Commander.
Some of the weird kind of little subtle things I wanted to go over because there's a lot of like little subtle changes that actually make a big deal. For me, I thought it was really cool that the repulsor is no longer a transport. The repulsor, they moved things around from like
right. It's no longer in the dedicated transport slot.
Yes. It's not a dedicated transport. Now it's a heavy support. So now the repulsor and the repulsor executioner, they're kind of corresponding to like a Land Raider and like a Land Raider Crusader. Which
makes sense.
There are these two big heavy tanks, and you can take the one that's less armed that carries way more people, or the one that's more armed, and carries
which makes sense. Again,
what do you want?
It puts them on parity with the Land Raider, like you were saying, and now the repulsor, or what is it called?
Impulsor.
The impulsor is now the Rhino. Exactly. Yes. So that makes sense. Now we just need to get the kit that takes the Hammerfall drop pod turret and puts it on top of an impulsor, and we've got our whirlwind.
Dude, I am waiting for a Hammerfall turret combo kit that just has like a passenger part on top, and it's the new Primaris drop pod.
There you go.
So let's talk about some of the new units, I guess, right? What do we think of the new Marine units?
Where to start?
I mean, it's funny because I haven't even really waded too much into the new Marine units as just changes to a lot of the classic ones. Like, I really like, I guess it's not even so much about the units themselves as about their unit size. Because there's some really weird decisions that were made on the new units. So like the what are they called? The new Melta guys. The Eradicators can go from 3 to 6. Which is really good. Like 6 Eradicators will kill, like if 6 Eradicators don't move, and shoot twice, like you're dead. Like they'll kill almost anything. That's so much
so
damage they can do.
Yeah.
Eradicators definitely seem like one of the units to watch out for at this point.
You can
100%.
take if you take 6 of them, can you get 2 multi-meltas, or are you still limited to 1?
You can take 2 multi-meltas in them.
For every 3. For every 3, I'm looking.
So here's a couple of key things about Eradicators, right? They can go up to 6 now. If you take 6 of them, you can have 2 of them can upgrade to multi-meltas. They also got the new weapon, which is the heavy melter rifle.
Yep.
Which is mostly identical to the gun they have right now, except instead of assault, it is heavy, and it basically gets 2 more damage, a flat 2 damage at all over the rifle. So it's very powerful. Now, there are 2 more things you can do with these guys that make them particularly scary. First off, is you can put them in strategic reserve and outflank with them, right?
Ooh, yeah.
So they can come in from the side of the table, which makes them much easier to get into range of what you want, other than trying to advance across the table. It also means they can't be shot. There is also now just a 2-point stratagem in the book that lets a unit count as if it hadn't moved. So that used to be specific to like salamanders, I think. So you can just bring these guys on somewhere and then double tap with no penalty for moving with your crazy multi-guns. And you'll probably kill whatever. Like Larry said, like that unit has it not only has a max damage of in the hundreds of damage, but because once you get into half range, or even with the heavy melter guns, you don't have to be in half range for it, because it has such most of them have like at least a 3 damage minimum, right?
Yeah.
So
I mean, it's a flat 18 damage for 1 volley if you roll absolutely minimum, right?
Right.
And you can fire twice. So,
and they kept the core, and they keep core, so they are getting rerolls.
Their damage output is 3 through 8 per guy.
3 through 10 per guy. Per shot. The heavy melter rifle can get up to 10 damage a shot.
Correct. It can get up to 10.
So this is they're not cheap. They're like 40-ish points, I think. But these are models that a heavy melter rifle model can do 20 damage, 1 model in a turn. The multi-melta guy can do like 32 damage in a turn.
Right.
And you can have 2 of them. 100%. So
so I think Eradicators are a real hot, or like they are in the, as we're going over the hot or not. Let's just Eradicators hot.
Yes.
Everyone? Yes. All right.
Hey,
let's talk
Hammerfall.
Let's
go to the Hammerfall real quick, because that thing
Hammerfall
to me is an interesting.
I do not like it.
It's a
I do not like it either. Hammerfall Bunker.
Hammerfall Bunker, number 1. It is a fortification.
Which is weird.
Now.
Well, note also, it's really strange. So this is the Hammerfall Bunker, right? And we know what it is. In the core rulebook, this thing is titled the Hammerfall Drop Turret.
Yeah,
it does have a different at some point I think they changed their mind for what this thing is.
So let's break it down.
It went from a drop turret to a bunker,
fortification that does not get to drop in. There, as far as I can tell, I was talking with Thomas about it too, Goat Boy about it. There is no way to move this thing onto the board using an alternative deployment method. It does not have a deep strike ability, drop pod ability, anything like that. So it is a fortification, which means
and fortifications can't be put into reserve.
Exactly.
So there is, like you said, there is no weird shenanigans with that.
Yeah. So from the lore, it says that it drops in from space like a drop pod, same deployment style. Okay, cool. Except you deploy it in your deployment zone, and that's going to change mission to mission. And you can't move it once it's down. It has no movement value at all. So it is a building that you get to place, which can be useful, sure, but it's going to cramp your deployment zone, man. I can't see people taking a fortification network for these, 2 or 3 of them. It's just going to if you get stuck with a mission with a tiny deployment zone, you're not going to have anywhere to put your army. These things are big, footprints.
And yet so you say that, right? Like no one is going to take one of these things, but they're no good if you take one of them because of the way their weird special rule were. Their weird special rule, like everyone freaked out about it when it first came out. Oh my god, because it's like up on top is basically a whirlwind launcher. So
it's not.
There's a whirlwind.
It doesn't have indirect fire.
But it doesn't have indirect fire.
Yeah.
Correct. Right. So it's just right. It's just a missile launcher, and then it's weird. The weird thing that makes it weird is its main gun. Whether you take the flamer array, or the heavy bolter array, is it gets one shot at every unit in range with no max. So if there's 50 units in range, it's going to shoot 50 times. But if there's one unit in range,
no,
correct, and line of sight. Well,
you get the fire ones.
Correct. Its weapon array fires one time. But at the same time, being shot by a heavy bolter isn't going to hurt anybody. And being shot by a heavy
4 also, remember.
Correct. Isn't going to hurt anyone. So this thing becomes deadly is if you did take 3 of them. Because then, like, if you have 3 of them, then you're like, hey, everything within 36 inches gets shot by
3 heavy bolters, which is 9
by 3
shots.
heavy bolters every turn. And that's going to wear an army down. But again, who's going to take 3 of them?
It is 175 points also.
Right.
It's not cheap. It's not particularly tough. It's toughness 8 with 3-up save and 14 wounds, which isn't like it's not like a vehicle, but it's not really.
It's not a pushover, but it's not
tougher than any of the other vehicles. And again, 8th edition has generally the 8th edition tables we're seeing have denser terrain, more obscuring terrain, less line of sight. So something that's stuck in your deployment zone and needs line of sight to target things may not get a ton of as many targets, or this can just be killed on turn 1.
Right.
If you're it's definitely one of those things that like I feel is either going to end up not being that great, or it's going to be like, oh, we're playing on an open table and you're going to be able to shoot my whole army.
Sure.
I'm just going to kill you on turn 1.
I mean, its existence is definitely a thing that pushes the game and players to buy more terrain.
Yeah,
I'll put it that way.
Like it's terrain, but no, I just don't like it that much. It doesn't really add anything to the army that it needed. Right? It's
okay. I want to put you guys.
Do anything really unique to me.
I want to put you guys on the spot. Let's talk about something that we knew very little about. What do we think about the Gladiator family? I want to talk about the Gladiators and the Storm Speeders, because these are big new families of units that are going to take the place of old classic vehicles that have been around for 20 years. The question is, how good are they? Are they actually going to is the Gladiator going to actually replace the Predator? Is it worth it?
Well,
or do they both stay on the shelf?
That's a low bar.
Or do they both stay on the shelf?
They'll both stay on the shelf. So one thing I want to mention about the Gladiator and the Repulsor Executioner while we're at it is that the Quillion optics, which both the Gladiator Lancer and their Executioner have, changed.
Okay.
In 8th edition, in the prior codex, if you move less than half your movement, you could fire twice with your turret gun, right?
Yep.
Which was really good.
Which is really good.
Now it just adds +1 to hit to the turret gun.
Sure.
Less good.
Which is not really good, especially because there's lots of other ways to get +1 to hit in this book. All Tech Marines, for instance, every turn can pick a vehicle and give it +1 to hit.
I mean, I think that's effectively a replacement for the fact that they're not core anymore, right? Because that's the main, you'd be like, I'm going to stand it next to my officer and give them some aura to make them more accurate.
I'd rather shoot again. Shot than the +1 to hit.
But
this is a downgrade, and the Repulsor Executioner gets worse because of it. And the Repulsor Executioner was it was so off the chart good. I mean, it might have been. It was pretty expensive, and it was dropping out of favor. But so let's go through them. The Gladiator Lancer, right? That's
Gladiator Lancer.
That's the one that's similar to the Repulsor Executioner. It has
the one with the big gun
destroyer on it.
Mm-hmm.
I think this tank is garbage. Just gonna throw that out there.
Woo. Why?
So it is an expensive tank. It is like 220, 230 points. None of these are very cheap, right?
Right.
It doesn't have any special, like it's toughness 8 with 12 wounds and 3-up save. So it's the tough tank profile, but it doesn't have anything to make it. It doesn't have an invulnerable save or anything that makes it extra tough.
Okay.
And really, all you get from it is this laser destroyer. Like, its secondary weapons are some short-range anti-infantry weapons, which
doesn't make a lot of sense.
It doesn't pair well with the 72-inch range heavy destroyer.
Yeah,
sure.
And the heavy weapon, I mean, it shoots on a 2-up and it gets 2 shots, but you're paying like 200 points for this thing that gets 2 shots a turn that are strength 10, that are decent but not crazy good.
I just want to interject something real quick, and then we'll go back to Abe. I just noticed it's really odd that they, in 8th, there was the whole concept that, like, land raiders, because they're big chunky tanks that actually drive on the ground, they had a little bit more wounds and were 1 toughness higher than the Repulsor family, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the Gladiator family has 1 toughness higher and 1 wound more than the Predator family.
Right, and also
it's weird.
All of the Space Marine tanks lost fly. All the hover tanks do no longer have the fly keyword.
Oh, you're right.
It's not super relevant anymore because you can't. The fallback and fly thing got rid of.
Sure,
but they all lost fly. I mean, arguably, if you're looking at the repulsor at the Gladiator Lancer, the Vindicator is a better anti-tank weapon than it.
Woo! Okay, let's move on to the Reaper. Gladiator Reaper. What do we think? This is the one with the anti-personnel.
Right.
With like the twin the Tempest bolter that's the twin heavy onslaught Gatling cannon heavy 24. Heavy 24 weapon. 30-inch range.
I don't think it's very good either.
I want to say as a Blood Angel fan, that also has Tyranids, that one would be my pick. But I have to agree with Abe. On paper, they're not looking too hot right now. I mean, they do replace the Predator family, but again, that's a very, very low bar to clear.
Very low bar.
I think nobody was trying to step over that bar. But I do want to say one thing though. I think all the models are sweet. So from a collector's perspective, I'm probably gonna get one, and I'm probably gonna go with the soup double heavy onslaught cannon, and just I don't care because I'm following the rule of cool. So.
I think the Lancer looks sweet. Like it looks like a cool like sci-fi main battle.
Sure,
tank. Even more than the Executioner, because the Executioner is so chunky. But
the Executioner, the turret on the Executioner really did make that look more like an Abrams versus a Bradley, and that was a much needed, comparison there. So, look better.
The Gladiator is just a tank to me. It's not necessarily bad, but it doesn't do anything unique, right?
It's a future Predator. It's an upgraded Predator.
But it's worse than a Predator because it doesn't have any anti-tank ability. Like the Predator is actually decent at killing tanks if you needed it to, right? Like it had some ability. This is a gun. This is all 1 damage guns on the Gladiator.
Sure, but you weren't taking a Predator. Nobody was taking a Predator anyway because other things in the army destroy tanks better, like the Eradicators and stuff like that.
And now you have this Reaper, which is a decent anti-infantry platform. It has a lot of slower damage, 1 wound, 1 AP, 1 damage, 1 AP, lower strength guns, but like the Space Marine Army has a lot of that already.
Agreed. Yeah.
I don't have to work hard to get mass volume.
Let's go for number 3, the Gladiator Valiant, real quick. Same thing, up, down, or is it the best of the 3?
I think it's the best of the 3.
It has it has the twin Las Talon on it.
Yeah.
And 2 multi-meltas. So this is
2
right. So if we want to look at this as being the direct replacement to like the Predator Annihilator, it has the 4 las cannons of the Predator Annihilator and then 2 multi-meltas, which are 4 other shots. So it's basically twice the firepower of a Predator Annihilator. So
it does look like that thing can definitely throw out a large amount of damage.
Right, and this is it is short range. It is all 24 inches. It does have movement 10, so it can get up. So it's not the hugest problem, but it is the more expensive one too. So I still think it's a little fragile. Like if you try to send it to go hunt knights, the knights will probably be able to kill it before it can kill a knight, and not that much cheaper than them. But I do think that this has enough firepower, though it is very, very swingy because it has a lot of things that do D6 if you're not within 12 inches. But this definitely has. I think there's a role for this. That I mean, if you compare that for almost the same points, the Lancer has a max damage output of a max and a tank damage output of 12 damage a turn, whereas this thing has like 70 damage a turn.
Right. It's not. There's not a good comparison. Yeah, that's
right.
Pretty,
you're like, which one do I want to take? The one that's going to.
And with 9th edition smaller boards, like to me, it feels like everything effectively has 6 to 12 inches longer of a weapon range. Is kind of if you were doing apples to apples. So like 24 is kind of like 30 to 36 of past editions.
A unit that can move 10 inches and not take a penalty to hit with it probably is not going to have a huge problem getting its guns into range. It will be a little harder to get the multi-meltas into half range. That still was a little harder, but it's not going to be able to do that on turn 1 probably.
It takes a little work.
But it's not really going to have a problem getting its guns into range. You're probably going to be able to shoot this every turn.
So I want to go a little faster, but let's move on over and let's talk Storm Speeders. All right, Storm Speeders, same thing. We got 3 of them. Also, there's the whole question of like, why does the Storm Speeder exist? Like, is the Storm Speeder actually a different thing, or is it just kind of like a very slightly tweaked Gladiator?
So this one I want to say, I think it's neat looking, but I don't know how big it's going to be. And I think the footprint on those is really what's going to determine how ultimately how useful those end up being. Points wise, whatever, firepower wise, it's.
I mean, I think
you could do other, you could get other things, but like it's just not. I don't know.
I think the fact that the Storm Speeder has fly and the Gladiator doesn't, right there, you will see them used differently.
Potentially. And these may be some things that, we see certain, particularly like Dark Angels, which they get the Raven Wing keyword. That gives them some bonuses. We may see some use out of that. If we want to look at them, the first one is the Hail Strike. I think this is garbage.
Okay.
Again, I don't like it. Again. So one of the big things these are all going to struggle with is that they're almost 200 points. They're they're in the 200 point area, and that they are just toughness 6 with 10 wounds and a 3-up save. Right? They're not all that hard to kill still.
It's 200. It's almost 200 points that you're just going to drop.
And so this one, we're looking at a vehicle that, again, like the Gladiator Reaper, has a decent amount of anti-infantry firepower, but that's not something the army really needs, and it's competing in a very glutted area. Right? It's got an onslaught cannon. It's got a twin heavy stubber. It's got some frag storm launchers. If we, even if we get it, on average, it's basically got the firing output of like a squad of Intercessors, which are a more useful unit, arguably.
How much is a land speeder now as well? Because I don't remember that because
they're like 85 to 100 something ish, depending on which one you take, because they did break land speeders up into 3 types.
Right. So that was kind of my issue was like, does this thing generate more firepower than a land speeder? Can I hide it better?
Land speeders will cost you 70 to 120 is the range.
Yeah,
sure. So again, if the Storm Speeder is supposed to be, the Primaris version of a land speeder, you're paying a really big points premium. We still don't know the actual footprint of the model because the land speeder, you could hide that thing. It was small. It was small enough you could zip it around and hide it. The Storm Speeder does not look like it's going to be a small vehicle. It looks like it's going to be much bigger, and
I think it's going to be
the size of a Gladiator.
I think it's the size of the old Predator is what it looks like. It's about that big. It looks like it's like roughly.
It's a size of a tank instead of a size of a of a truck or something like that. It's I don't know.
There's arguments for it, I think, but I don't think that one fills any role.
No,
now
that one no, but the other ones that actually do anti-tank or whatever might be useful.
So the Thunderstrike is the next one. This is an interesting one because one of the things I missed the first time I looked at it. Now, also another problem with these I will point out is that because they have 10 wounds, they do degrade as they take damage. Land speeders don't degrade.
Yeah,
sure.
So once you start taking damage, you are going to start losing ballistic skill and movement, which which means it's not as deadly at that point.
That's a problem. Yeah.
Well, that is a problem. Same thing with the bunker too, right? It also degrades, which is weird. But so the Thunderstrike, this is a weird one because it does have ballistic skill 2+ at full wounds. It
does. That is weird.
Yeah. So there's a couple areas in here again where they just decided these Marine guys get 2+ ballistic skill, even though they're like the same as all the rest of them for some reason.
Right.
Better optics.
But that would be a rule, right? You would think. So I think this one is supposed to be like the anti-aircraft one, which is why it has ballistic skill 2+, so it can be an anti-aircraft vehicle.
Sure.
I think it's actually probably the best one. It combines a decent number of good shots with some good damage. So it has the Storm Fury missile, which is a heavy 1, strength 10, AP3, D6 damage. It's only one shot, but that's a decent shot, and with ballistic skill 2, it'll probably hit. It has a Thunderstrike Las Talon, which is a Las Talon, but has a 36-inch range. And then it has the Icarus. Yep. Yeah, and then it has the Icarus pod, which is heavy 2d3, strength 7, AP1, 2 damage, and blast. And if you're shooting against aircraft, it gets +1 to hit, but it doesn't take a -1 to hit other things. So that's actually like a fairly good weapon for killing Marines because it has blast and it has a decent number of shots and does 2 damage. So I think this tank combined, like it can get up to 9 shots, and all of its shots are pretty good.
Sure.
And it has ballistic skill 2. So I think it's probably the best of the 3. The last one you have is the Hammer Strike, which is the the supposedly anti-tank one. But honestly, I don't think it's quite as good as it's kind of a wash at how good an anti-tank it is compared to the other one. It has the Melta Destroyer, which is a 3-shot multi-melta, which is a deadly weapon if you can get close, definitely. And then it has the Hammer Strike missile, which is 2 shots, strength 8, AP3, and 3 damage. And then it has two crack grenade launchers, basically, which do D3 damage. So it's okay, but the crack grenades are fairly auxiliary. And like ultimately its damage output isn't crazy better, and it's worse against like 2-wound infantry because it just gets less shots that are going to kill 2-wound infantry. And again, it goes back out to ballistic skill 3. So,
it's kind of weird they made these different, the Gladiators and the Storm Speeders be different roles, but really they don't line up exactly correct with the role. I don't know if I missed the days where you could kind of mix and match or build your own stuff, because you could really optimize some of these tanks with specific loadouts if you could.
You really could, and we've seen. I think we've seen these things get split off into different data sheets. Not really to prevent that, but because it makes the points a lot easier. If you look at the back of the book, the points are laid out in a way that you basically are paying points for the unit, and then it's a small amount for a couple upgrades. So it's let them do better, things like that. It also means, if you really wanted to take, because the one difference between with the Storm Speeders and the Land Speeders, a Land Speeder you can take 3 in a unit slot, where Storm Speeders are just 1 to a slot.
Right.
But you could take 3 of each if you wanted.
So, guys, we are getting close on time here, but I don't want to just close it off right now. So, Abe, Abe and Adam, why don't you each take the unit you're most excited about in the Codex and talk about why?
Oh, geez. Abe, you go first.
Okay. Dreadnoughts.
Of the new unit. Oh, sure. Okay.
I want to mention Dreadnoughts because I think they're the most improved thing in the entire book right now. If it's a new unit, it's the Invader ATB. I've already talked about that thing. So one thing that people missed, because it's easy to miss, is that all Dreadnoughts got the Duty Eternal rule. This used to be a stratagem, maybe just for Iron Hands. I don't remember, but it used to be the one that the Iron Hands used. But now all dreadnoughts, not in Victor War suits because they're not dreadnought, but everything that's a dreadnought is -1 to all damage that they take, down to a minimum of 1 all the time.
That's good.
So that's really good. Dreadnoughts also, because they're vehicle, they're not infantry. They don't take the -1 to move and shoot anymore. A lot of their weapons got better because of the increase of weapons in the book, and almost across the board, dreadnoughts did not get more expensive. In fact, several of them got like 5 or 10 points cheaper. So you have a unit that wasn't great, or it was kind of on the cusp before, but didn't get expensive, got better guns, and got more survivable. I think that's really cool. Also, you've got things, Tech Marines. Again, every Tech Marine can just give a Dreadnought +1 to hit every turn if they want. And then there is the new Tech Marine Warlord trait that gives all Dreadnoughts within 6 inches of them +1 attack and strength. The strength isn't actually really relevant at all, but the attack does actually matter. So I think you still have the ability to build armies that are like 10 or 12 Dreadnoughts in this list. And with
Monster Mash with Dreadnoughts.
Yeah, and with improved guns, improved the durability and all that, I think that's actually pretty impressive for them. We'll have to see what happens with the Forge World Dreadnoughts, because that is where a lot of there's a lot of room for shenanigans there. That's where you get a lot of the ones where like, oh, I can take this guy with 2 multi-meltas all of a sudden, and if that's still a thing, there's some interesting things there that could happen. So we'll have to see what happens.
Also, I want to point out all Dreadnoughts got core, which was
exactly. Dreadnoughts are also core,
and I was not expecting that. So you can combo Dreadnoughts really well now.
Yeah, so all those things happened. The other thing I do want to really quickly point out something, and then I'll let Adam go. Outriders, people were asking about those. Those stayed at unit size 3. They did not go up to unit size 6 in this book. But one thing that's really interesting is in the new Deathwatch FAQ, they changed how kill teams work, and you can build a kill team that comes with 5 intercessors and 5 outriders, and then you can combat squad those into a squad of 5 outriders, which is a troop choice that has objectives secured.
Wow!
Yeah, and
I don't think that was supposed to happen that way
because they're a troop choice. I think you can also do that with Eradicators in that unit too, and you can get troop choice Eradicators.
Spicy.
Deathwatch, we may have to see what happens with their actual codex, but right now Deathwatch seems really spicy with some stuff. If you're like, I'm just going to have 20 objective secured Deathwatch Eradicator, outriders charging you on turn 1.
Heck yeah,
dude. I like this a lot. All right, Adam, to you. What are you excited about?
I'm going to go a completely different direction than Abe. I'm actually excited about the heavy intercessors and the assault intercessors. I know we have assault intercessors now,
okay,
but I was actually really stoked of them. Again, I play Blood Angels, so getting the chainsword option in a troop choice squad with primary, I've been waiting for that option, so I'm really excited about them. I don't care about stratagems or like how optimized they are. I don't care. I'm playing Blood Angels. I'm doing it for fun. I'm doing it because I want to do that. I like the heavy assault intercessors or heavy intercessors. Again, same deal. I know their gun isn't. It is better than the bolt rifles, but essentially you could get heavy bolt rifles and do almost the same thing. Or stalker pattern or whatever. It doesn't matter to me. I think they look cool. I think the guns are, secondary to me. It's the idea of like 3 wound guys that are troops that are marching around, just laying down a wall of lead. And again, to Abe's point, lots of ways in the army to get lots of, single shot, low strength, just pumping out a lot of shots. So, that's the way I want to do that for the army that I have in my head. Outriders, and other stuff coordinating with that, and then sprinkling some Eradicators for the anti-vehicle stuff. Those are the 2 units I'm most excited about, and they both happen to be troops, which is just neat.
And there's a cool thing in the book too. I'll throw out that the Space Marines do have 2 ways of getting an aura that either lets everything within 6 inches get objectives secured, or if they already have objectives secured, they count as double models for that. And I think that's a big boon to a heavy intercessor-based list, which was going to suffer on just even though they are troops that have justice secured, it was going to suffer on not having a whole ton of models on the table because they're 28 points.
Sure. Yep.
Even though Space Marines don't necessarily aren't a big horde army, and this was going to be worse. But if you can get one of those auras in there, and suddenly you're like, well, that actually makes up a lot for your smaller unit size, your smaller numbers, and makes the heavy intercessors a lot more viable. They also have a stratagem that gives them lets them ignore AP -1 kind of thing.
Yeah.
So
again, I just think they look cool.
Yeah,
I just think they look cool. They look like they're not quite Terminators to me, but they are at this point. I feel like the Gravis armor equivalent of a Terminator. If they had a Power Fist option or something like that for each guy, they would definitely be Terminators. But they, but
it's
okay.
Yeah.
Right. It's okay. I'm willing to wait. I'm still holding out that we'll see a heavy assault intercessor squad that is effectively the Terminator close combat version with Gravis armor. I don't know if it's going to happen anytime soon. Maybe in the next edition.
Well, they gotta find 20 more units to release next year, right?
I know, right? Like, come on, give me my Thunderhammer Lightning Claw versions. What's up?
Yeah.
Come on, let's make it happen, GW.
All right.
So that's what I'm excited about.
I'm a believer in sleeper and underdog units, and I love that. So the completely ignored unit that I'm most excited about in the new Codex is that they increased the firepower of suppressors by 50%. So they go to
there you go
2 shots to 3 shots, and that's kind of like that's like a whole squad of like a crappy predators that are just jumping around dudes. 3-shot autocannons, I'll take it.
Those are the jump pack dudes, right? That you never see.
Yeah. And they went from heavy 2 to heavy 3. I'll take it.
Heck yeah, dude.
They didn't go up in cost. They were just like, no one was using these guys. How do we fix them? What if we just give them 50% more firepower? Sounds good. Let's try that.
Yeah. I mean, Adam, I think the again, looking at like the Death Watch, they have the Indominator kill team, which mixes heavy intercessors, aggressors, inceptors, and eradicators. And like that seems like what you want, because all of a sudden you're like, oh, I got like 5 heavy and they're troops with justice secured. So you're like, I got 5 heavy intercessors. I've got 1 or 2 aggressors with the power fists in there, and then I've got 1 or 2 eradicators. And I'm like, man, that seems pretty nasty right there.
You're not wrong, Abe. You are not wrong.
Mars is going to tell us what is going on for the rest of the week, and then we're going to wrap up the show with the instant question for the snap question for these two, for all 3 of us.
So coming up tomorrow, we have the RPG show at 3 p.m. Central. We're going to be talking about all the latest things. I know that there's been some race changes in D&D, so I'm sure we're going to be covering that. At 8 p.m. on Wednesday, again, that is Central, we have Goat Boy painting, and I do believe he's still working on Space Marines. That's going to be over on twitch.tv/Bill of Lost Souls. And then Friday, Adam's in our studio, and we're going over all of the releases for the upcoming weekend, thanks to Dragon Slayer Austin.
All right, guys, your snap question. The snap question is, you get to start a new Space Marine army. What is your chapter, and what type of troop unit are you going to build your army around? Abe.
I mean, right now, it's Death Watch, because they seem completely bonkers to me. All
right.
That just get to ignore all the restrictions of a regular Marine army.
And your troop choice is Outriders.
I mean, you can have units of 5 eliminators as a troop choice. Like,
all right, so Abe is going to be in the Watch Fortress, furiously painting. Adam.
Yeah.
I don't feel like I can answer this one because I have my Blood Angels that I've been working on. So I would do Blood Angels, and I would go heavy assault intercessor. Like that's I'm just gonna finish that army now. Like that's the army that I've been wanting to build, and now I can actually do it. So
I'm gonna go with Imperial Fist heavy intercessors. That's the army I'd love to start. Right now.
Nice. I can't do another yellow army.
Ready to go.
My Tyrians would be mad.
All right, everyone. That is our show. Thanks so much. We will catch you next week. We'll be back.
Bye, everybody.
So long.